Hey everybody, it's Mr. Forrest here. Here is Chapter 11, Troubleshooting Your Wireless Network. So let me go ahead and share my screen. There we go. Okay. So troubleshooting wireless networks. Got it. Okay. So, identifying some of your problems. Is it a global issue? Or is it an isolated problem? Is it a problem with the switch? Is it happening across the entire network or just on a particular client or an access point? Okay. Identify whether it's an issue is global or isolated. Okay. Certainly global problems usually involve a lot of different types of devices. Okay. Devices that can be related to them could be access points and bridges and controllers and so on. Okay. Transmitters and receivers. Okay, so they can go down, they can go bad, they can get interference or whatever. Okay, so think about that. Those transmitters and receivers, could have propagation issue and stuff like that. Remember we talked about the Fresnel. All of a sudden, we're interfering with the signal because the trees are getting bigger, or something is interfering with the or reducing that signal strength. Okay, maybe I'm getting no wireless connectivity. Okay, and so great. So what's happening? Is that just on the client side or whatever? Is there an IP address issue? Is it a security issue? Okay, going on. No connectivity on the client side. Okay, disabled radio, wireless networks, or whatever, or something that was not configured properly. Sometimes an update, on an operating system, all of a sudden things kind of get messed up, whatever. Okay, and so we need to take a look and take that into consideration. That sometimes before we roll out an automatic update and stuff, we should kind of not have an automatic update, but plan scheduled updates. Okay, that's a little bit easier to manage. Okay, protect the applicants. Okay. Other connectivity issues, again, if your wireless is not configured properly, if your LAN security settings are not configured properly, if you have IP address issues or whatever, that can create a problem. Okay. Again, there are settings that you can go into to try to configure your wireless security, and then try to identify some of this. We talked about this a couple of chapters ago about management software, right? Wireless management software, and looking at some of these things and saying, okay, well, is a problem, it kind of drives everybody nuts with the intermittent ones, okay, where things will drop every so often, whatever, what's causing that? Unfortunately, it's one of the harder ones. It's easier when it's broken to figure out what it is to fix it than when something is just intermittent and they got to try to drive you nuts as far as what's going on. And so we have to constantly test and figure out it only happens in this kind of scenario when the client is further out or goes into that room and we didn't really test the evaluation of that room. Okay. Again, we're looking at our throughputs and our distance to our access points, our outputs, and the number of devices and stuff that are associated with it. So we're looking at some of those numbers, and again, whether we're using a proprietary software, is something that is really up to us to help us kind of member manage. But we talked about before, the network administrator who is proactive and reactive. That reactive part, that's a tendency. But we got to drive away from the reaction towards the proactive side. In order to do that, we have to maintain and monitor our problems and stuff and see if we can fix some of these programs or problems so that we become more proactive and less reactive. Okay, so solutions that would slow the throughput. Okay, we may need to add access points. Maybe it was fine 5 years ago and it's 5 years later and we have more people and more need and software updates and different programs. And we went from a lot of emails to all of a sudden we're sending a lot of videos or graphics or whatever, or floor plans and datas or whatever, that could change that kind of process. Any issues with the antennas and stuff like that. Okay, so looking for ways to maybe load balance part of our network and say, hey, let's put some of this on a different segment, and that might help our performance. Okay, common applications that are used, okay, for the software: databases, engineering applications, file servers, barcodes, printers, voice handsets, IoTs. Wow, just explodes. We have all these IoT things, okay, that are happening now, where all of a sudden we're putting these sensors and these monitors and these cameras and whatever, these Internet of Things, okay, being added to our network that were never there before or weren't there when the last time we did a site survey. And so maybe we need to come back and revisit our site survey on our network and reevaluate them. Optimizing wireless networks, factors considered, okay, infrastructure, the frequency, the client's device load balancing, the access point capacity, okay, and are we already hitting that point, okay, understanding hidden node problem issues or whatever, okay. So some of these things that we take a look at in this chapter are really getting us to try to pay attention to saying, hey, what we set up on a brand new network does not mean it's going to be the same network in the years to come. And so there should be a mechanism to come back and revisit this. Again, shifting from the reactive to the proactive, having a policy in place that says maybe it's every 3 years. You go back and you do a brand new site survey, take the old one, see what's changed, do an update to that, and figure out what our next plans are. And that process, maybe we can problem solve and eliminate some issues, which will allow us more time to become more proactive, less reactive. Okay. Anyway, that was it. Chapter 11 is pretty simple. So let me go ahead and stop the share and hope you had a great day.